Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be taking a look at EX08, and EX8 offers us lots of new and powerful tools to build and iterate on some new and existing decks. And today's deck I'm going to be taking a look at is going to be the latest iteration of a fan favorite, which is going to be Tyrannomon. So Tyrannomon is kind of like an aggro control deck where it has lots of different ways to want to attack into the opponent's Digimon to beat them up due to various different abilities that it's playing around with. The deck has lots of ways to increase its DP to make sure your Digimon are always going to be stronger than the opponent's, and one of the biggest additions to the deck is the fact that it now has the ability to evolve mid-attack, giving it even more flexibility than ever before. On top of that, because Tyrannomon has a couple of different ways that we could approach building it, there are just different approaches depending on how you want to build and play the deck. The three most popular ways is going to be either a green base, or it's going to be a red base focused on Agumon or Guilmon. The biggest weaknesses of the deck is in part due to some of its strengths. So while running different colors and having lots of different tools and mechanics is really fun to build around, it does sometimes hurt the deck's overall consistency, especially when you're trying to run specific colors and specific traits. Then there are some older tools which the deck still wants to use that aren't necessarily as efficient as modern tools, so the deck still sometimes is moving a little bit slower than it reasonably should. And then, like most decks, Tyrannomon does have some really decent protections that he's playing around with, but because of all of the different protections that are currently in the game, especially in more powerful decks, we are trying to find alternative ways to bypass the protections that we currently have, so any deck that's using some of the better soft-based removal is going to have a pretty decent time into Tyrannomon. So I would keep all this in mind that this is kind of just a more casual deck. I do think it does have some potential to be really strong in at least rogue tier, but it's not something I would recommend at a high competitive level. It is just more for fun at the end of the day, and it does have lots of really cool things going on with the deck and ways to build and approach it. So with all that said and done, let's just dive right into the deck profile and see what we're working with. So I am going to be electing to use a red base, so I'm going to be playing 4 copies of the best red Digitama, which is going to be the BT14 Coromon, because it's just one of the easiest ways for red to have card draw. It's just triggering when the opponent's security is removed in any way, shape, or form during our turn. And then when it comes to the level 3s, I am going to be running a more Agumon lineup. So Agumon does canonically digivolve into Tyrannomon, so I wanted to keep that a little bit thematic, while Agumon also gives us some interesting tech and tools, especially on the higher stages, that we actually can use to some varied benefits. So I'm going to be running 4 copies of the brand new EX08 Agumon as one of the best, if not the best Agumon for this deck, because it's going to be the deck's dedicated digging or searching tool, looking for our Tyrannomon names, reptile or dinosaur traded Digimon, and the new main tamer for this deck. Then it also just has a nice inheritable ability that just gives us some extra DP, which is why I'm also going to be running 4 copies of the starter deck 1 Agumon. So this is kind of a techer filler slot, but sometimes you do just want a simple card to accomplish a simple goal, and this is just helping with our Digimon's overall DP. Then the last Agumon I'm going to be running is going to be 2 copies of the EX1 Agumon. So again, this does kind of just seem to be like another filler card. I know a lot of Agumons like to play with Greymons, but this Agumon with its inheritable ability is more specifically looking for any tamer, which we do have some tamers that we want to find, and any Digimon with Agumon in its name, which we have a couple of different ones that we're already playing. And then the last rookie of the deck isn't necessarily an Agumon, but we do have an Archetype Floodgate, so we might as well run it, and that's going to be 2 copies of Gaussmon. So the Floodgate ability that we're trying to use with Gaussmon is the fact that the opponent can't reduce Digivolution costs, which really hurts scrambles, and it also hurts memory boost, and depending on the deck and matchup, it can hurt some of their own engine-based cards. Then when it comes to the level 4s, I'm just gonna keep it simple and running an all Tyrannomon lineup. So I'm going to be running a couple of old Tyrannomons, so that's going to be 2 copies of the BT11 Tyrannomon as the deck's Tamer setter, so that way we actually have an efficient way to try to get our Tamer onto the field. Then I'm also going to be running 2 copies of the BT14 Tyrannomon, so this has the ability to try to help reduce the Digivolution going into our higher stages, which is actually pretty decent because this card and the BT11 Tyrannomon are a little bit less efficient than the brand new Tyrannomon that we got in EX08. But the inheritable ability is also really good for this deck and how it works, because at the end of our turn, once per turn, if this Digimon has Tyrannomon in its name or is a dinosaur traded Digimon, then it can attack, basically giving our Digimon pseudo blitz. And then I'm going to be running 3 copies of the brand new EX08 Tyrannomon. I wanted to squeeze one more copy of this card into the deck, but I still felt like some of the old Tyrannomons were still worth running. So you could kind of play around with the Tyrannomon lineup. I kind of still was, but this is just what I'm settling on, because this new Tyrannomon has a cheaper Digivolution cost, Digivolving on top of reptiles, which the old ones don't, so it gives this one a little bit more of an edge, being a cheaper card to use. Then it also has a fantastic security ability where we just get to play it out at the end of the battle for free, so that way we can have a surprise Digimon pop up on our field. Then it also has a fantastic ability that triggers at the start of our main phase and when we Digivolve into this Digimon, where it's just adding some extra DP that lasts until the end of the opponent's turn to again make our Digimon as strong as possible. And then the last level 4 of the deck is going to be 3 copies of the promo Tyrannomon X Antibody. So because I'm running already just a whole bunch of different Tyrannomons, Tyrannomon X Antibody is a very easy card for us to use. Then he natively comes with the raid ability, so if we need to beat over smaller bodies, we could, and with the amount of increases that we have in our DP, he also could potentially hit above his weight class. Then he also has a really fantastic when attacking ability, where if Tyrannomon or X Antibodies in this Digimon's Digivolution source, then we could Digivolve into a Tyrannomon named Digimon or a dinosaur traded Digimon from our hand and reduce the cost of that evolution by 1, kind of doing something similar to what BT14 is doing, trying to make going into our higher stages a little bit more efficient. Then the inheritable ability is actually pretty important, considering this is where we're going to be getting piercing, so when we're beating up the opponent's Digimon, we're also going to be dealing damage at the same time. And then when it comes to the level 5s, I'm still going to be trying to stay in Archetype as much as possible. So as a result, I'm going to be running 4 copies of the EX08 Metal Tyrannomon. So this is probably the best level 5 in the entire deck, hands down. And what's making this card really good is its on-play and when Digivolving ability, where we get to suspend 1 Digimon. Doesn't state exactly what Digimon it needs to be, so it could be ours or the opponent's. Ideally, we're going to suspend the opponent's down. And then if this Digimon is suspended, then we get to de-Digivolve 1 on one of the opponent's Digimon, which already is really good, considering de-Digivolve is one of the best forms of soft removal in the game currently. And we even get some extra benefits on top of that, where until the end of the opponent's turn, their effects can't bounce our Digimon back to our hand or deck, and we're also unaffected by de-Digivolve ourselves. So not only are we de-Digivolving the opponent's Digimon, but we're also going to be gaining lots of additional protections, which is what's making this card the best level 5. Then when it comes to the supporting level 5s, you can kind of just play whatever you want. It really doesn't matter as long as you're sticking inside of the Tyrannomon archetype, just for the deck's overall fluidity. So I'm going to be running 2 copies of the promo Mame Tyrannomon. So this is also counted as a Tyrannomon, so it does still work with the deck, on top of the fact that it has collision and blocker natively, so it's just a pretty good pairing of abilities, and we already know the level 4 can potentially give us piercing, so it's just still a really strong card. Collision does give us extra ways to be able to delete the opponent's Digimon by battle, which is always nice, and it even has a nice all turns ability native to him, where once per turn, when an opponent's Digimon becomes suspended, ideally because of collision or some of our suspending effects, then we get to unsuspend this Digimon, so that way we could potentially multi-attack, which is really good. And the inheritable ability is kind of playing off of its native ability, where during all turns, once per turn, when an opponent's Digimon becomes suspended, then we get to unsuspend this Digimon, having access at that ability, whether we're using this card or digivolving on top of him. And then the last level 5 of the deck is going to be 2 copies of Master Tyrannomon from EX08. So this new version of Master Tyrannomon's pretty decent, having the Fortitude ability. So it does give us protection against our Digimon from being deleted, and if he is, then we get to replay him out as long as he had inheritable sources. And he has a really good on-play and when digivolving ability, giving us lots of flexibility on how we could use this card, where we get to suspend 1 Digimon down. Then, if this Digimon is suspended, we get to delete one of the opponent's Digimon with 8,000 DP or less, which is actually pretty decent removal for a level 5 Digimon body. Then his inheritable abilities doing the exact same as the old Master Tyrannomon, just giving our Digimon security attack plus, so it could hit a little bit harder. Then, when it comes to the level 6s, the main level 6 of the deck is going to be the one that you're going to want to focus on 9 out of 10 times, and that's going to be the 4 copies of Dinomon. So Dinomon seems to be really expensive, but we do have ways to be able to make him a little bit cheaper, and just digivolving on top of Tyrannomons or dinosaurs already makes him a little bit cheaper by default. Then, when it comes to his actual abilities, there's a lot going on with this card. So he natively has security attack +1 and fortitude, so he does have that same protection as Master Tyrannomon. And then if we pair this protection up with the Metal Tyrannomon, then it's a Digimon that you really don't want to delete, and can't be bounced or tucked, and can't be de-digivolved. So that's just a lot going on into how good this card can be at sticking around on the field. And you want this card to stick around on the field because it has an ability that triggers during the opponent's turn. While this Digimon is suspended, all of your opponent's Digimon can only attack suspended Digimon, basically acting like the penultimate redirector, where they're just forced to just ram themselves into Dinomon if they're gonna want to attack to begin with. Then when it comes to his on-play and when digivolving ability, when we actually get up into him, or if Fortitude is actually triggered, we get to suspend 1 Digimon down, and then we get to delete one of the opponent's suspended Digimon with the lowest DP, which is still pretty decent form of removal. And then when it comes to the supporting level 6 Digimon, this kind of matters a little bit less, but you do have lots of different options on what you could potentially do. I'm just going to be electing to use 2 copies of Medieval Gallantmon because this card is kind of just that good. So he does have the flexibility on how we could actually utilize the card, whether we're hard playing him or digivolving up into him. So if we're hard playing him, then we get to suspend 2 Digimon down to reduce his play cost by 4, effectively making him a 7 cost Digimon to hard play. He comes with Vortex and Alliance, which is really good, so that way Vortex allows him to attack even if we just played him, and Alliance allows us to be able to use our other Digimon to boost this Digimon, not only his damage, but the security attack as well. Then he has a nice when digivolving ability for when we're actually digivolving up into him, where we get to suspend one Digimon down, and then we also get to delete one of the opponent's Digimon with 8,000 DP or less, and then for each of the opponent's suspended Digimon, we get to add 3,000 DP to the maximum reach of what this ability can do. Then he even has a nice all turns ability to wrap up what this card is doing, making him a fantastic aggro control card that's kind of just doing what the deck wants to do, where during all turns, once per turn, when Digimon are played, we get to activate one of this Digimon's when digivolving effects, so that way we could try to control the field when the opponent is playing their Digimon, or if we're playing our Digimon, which this effect synergizes with Fortitude and our security abilities. And then when it comes to the level 7, because I'm already running lots of Agumons and I'm already in a red base, it kind of just makes sense to want to run at least a couple of copies of Agumon Bond of Bravery. So this can digivolve on top of our Agumons for 3 if we have 2 or fewer cards in our security. So if the opponent's aggressing onto us really hard and we just so happen to have an Agumon out, then we could have a surprise ace off of a rookie, which is really good, or at worst, we could still use this with either of our level 6s. And the reward for digivolving into this Digimon, whether it's during our turn or the opponent's, is his on-play and when digivolving ability to delete up to this Digimon's total DP worth of Digimon. So that is really decent because it could spread out and hit lots of different targets, or we could just focus all on one big target. It just depends on the matchup and the situation. Then he even has a nice when attacking ability that's actually helping us try to win the game a little bit, where if we have a Tamer on our field, we get to trash the top card of the opponent's security, so if they only have one security left, then this is a perfect game finisher. Then when it comes to the Tamers, because I am running a couple of copies of Bond of Bravery and I'm already running lots of Agumons, I'm also going to be running 2 copies of the BT6 Tai Kamiya. So this allows us to be able to warp up an Agumon into a Bond of Bravery. Then the real reason why we're using this card isn't necessarily for that warp play. It can help and it can close out games, so don't discredit it, but it's more for the value engine, where when we're going to be moving an Agumon or Greymon named card from our raising area to the battle area, then we get to gain a memory and draw a card, which is just really good at helping us with that extra resource generation. Then the main Tamer of the deck is going to be 4 copies of the brand new Ryutaro. So this has the ability where at the start of our main phase, if the opponent has a Digimon, then we get to gain a memory, which is pretty nice because the more Ryutaros we have on the field, then the more memory we're going to be able to generate passively. Then the secondary ability is what's making this card really good for the deck, where during your turn, when one of your Digimon with Tyrannomon in its name attacks, we get to suspend this Tamer and digivolve that Digimon into a Digimon with Tyrannomon in its name or Dinosaur in its traits from our hand and reduce the Digivolution cost by 1. So it's allowing us to Digivolve mid-attack and make our cards a little bit cheaper to use, which is actually a pretty good thing for how the deck wants to play. And then when it comes to the options, this is where things get a little bit less interesting because, well, it's just the most generic option package I could possibly run to try to get the most out of our cards, and that's going to be 2 copies of Offense Training for added consistency and cheaper evolutions, 2 copies of Guardant Memory Boost because we are playing with red and we're also playing with black cards, so being able to find both colors is really, really nice, so we could have our deck be as consistent as possible. And then the delay ability is just giving us extra memory later, and the last option is going to be 2 copies of Red Scramble because we are in a red base, so being able to, again, reduce our Digivolutions is always nice, and the delay ability to try to put red cards on the top of our deck from our trash is also really good at being able to reuse the parts and pieces we want and need, and if we don't have a Digimon in play, being able to play a 2000 DP or less red Digimon from our trash for free is obviously very good because we have lots of good targets that we could choose from. And for the most part, this is just my interpretation of the deck, and I think that the deck has lots of good things that are going on and can actually do some really powerful stuff to surprise the opponent and catch them off guard. And it's not like this is the only build. As I kind of already said earlier, there's a couple of different ways that we could build the deck, all depending on the different types of cards that you want to use, have access to, and are planning to try to incorporate to handle whatever meta you're going to be anticipating to play against. And it's not like this deck is going to be dead in the water either when it comes to potential future upgrades, because we know we're at least going to be getting a new promo Rust Tyrannomon that could fit inside of this deck rather nicely, on top of the fact that anytime we get any new low-end reptiles or high-end dinosaurs, that's something for us to think about as well. And feel free to tell me your thoughts about the deck down in the comments below. And while you're down there, you might as well leave a like and subscribe. And if you like this type of content, feel free to also hit that notification bell so that way you could stay up to date when my videos go live next. And with that, I hope to see everyone in the next video.